Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and welcome to the show. We got a great one for you today. The spring training is coming to an end, and that means actual real live baseball that counts and matters is just days away. But before we get there, we're going to talk about the ups and downs of spring training. 3 guys that are leaving in the right direction, and 3 that are, well, going in the wrong direction as spring training comes to a close. And I can't think of a better person to talk about all that and break down the bullpens, because the bullpens are in flux, to say the least. It's not a good scene for the bullpens, let me tell you. Closers, I've never seen anything like this before, and it's why I had to bring in my good pal, Aaron Pags, in to talk about it. You know him from the Fantasy Black Book. You also know him from the Perfectly Framed podcast, where they break down nothing but relief pitching all the time. It is unbelievable, and you are exactly who I wanted to talk about this with today. Aaron, welcome to the show, and I hope that you can help us all sort things out, and I mean us, like me included, because it is a cluster beyond possible recognition. So welcome aboard, my friend. How are you today?
Joe, thanks so much for having me on. Of course, I have to thank you again for getting me on in the Black Book this year.
Look at
Make
that.
sure you get a copy.
Sexy.
Always have the Black Book.
This is why you watch on YouTube, by the way.
That's
you don't just listen to the podcast. You watch us on YouTube at Fantasy Pros MLB, because when he flashes the very sexy Black Book right there, that looks good on camera. Let me tell you, we should turn it into a movie.
Not too late to get a digital copy.
That's right.
Kindle copy right now.
That's right. And updated RPV. So, look, you are a lover of all things bullpens. And I got to tell you, this seems like, even if you love bullpens, this is the rockiest start that I can imagine in quite some time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, quite some time. Probably rocky as ever since last season, right? Or the season before, It's like bullpen amnesia, I think. We all have that when it comes to fantasy baseball. Every single year we head into the season and we think we have these guaranteed lockdown top 10, top 5, top 15 closers. And then you look at the end of the year and you're like, this guy wasn't even drafted and he finished with 35 saves.
Yeah, well, those guys always come out of the woodwork, and hopefully we're going to talk about some of those today. We're also going to play a little game at the end with Aaron, a little Would You Rather, so we'll have some fun there, because we all know I'd like to have some fun. But before we get into the business of baseball, let's get into the business of getting you some free stuff, because we've still got just a few, hours now basically left for you to get your Juan Soto autographed jersey. That's right. All you got to do is go to fantasypros.com/MLB contest. Thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. What you do is you go to Apple Podcasts or CastBox, you write a review of the show, 5 stars. Joe Pisapia is bald and handsome and really smart, and Dan Harris is also there as well. Whatever you want to write, it doesn't matter. It's all going to be fantastic. You go there, you drop the review, then you go back to fantasypros.com/MLB contest, you fill out this form, you upload the screenshot, and boom, just like that, you are entered to win a Juan Soto. You know Juan, my Juan, Juan, as in Juan, whatever. You know how much I love Juan Soto. I am jealous that you get to get involved in this. And look, time's running out, so get going. Go to fantasypros.com/MLB contest and get involved in that right away. And while you're at it, make sure you get the draft assistant too, because I know a lot of people are waiting to the last minute to draft, which is smart. You're the smart people. Don't let anybody tell you different. So what you do is go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard, and you get the MLB draft assistant with Sync. Sync is going to go to your actual draft room and connect you to your draft and to the Fantasy Pro Sync, and give you up-to-the-minute advice for all of your picks. It tells you when you can wait on players, when to be aggressive on players. It gives you the percentage odds that a player will be picked before your next turn, and it works with any of your cheat sheets that you put together as well, and it's compatible with auction leagues too, so it's not just for snakes. So fantasypros.com/draftwizard, that's where you get the MLB draft assistant with Sync. Sync it to your league, win your league. I've seen a lot of people screenshotting me that they've, used different tools here, Fantasy Pros and the draft assistant and some of the RPV from our Black Book, Aaron, and they've had some great success with it. So go get that today. There's still time to get things right here and draft your teams before somebody else gets hurt. And, we'll just recap a little bit too, Aaron. Obviously, Eloy Jimenez, that was a huge injury. And then over the weekend, we got the news about Luke Voit too. He's going to be missing some time, which very frustrating, because I think people were really excited about Luke Voit this year, and now we're looking for some first basemen. I know Guzman's had a good spring there with Texas. We can kind of talk about him having a good spring, but where would you go in your mind to fill the void at first base if you're a Luke Voit owner already?
Yeah, this is, I'm looking to go a little cheaper than most. I'm a little more savvy when it comes to spending my fab money or my or my waiver priority. And you don't have to look even off the Yankees roster. They added Jay Bruce to their roster this offseason. He's batting in the heart of the order. I just saw today that Aaron Judge missed another spring training game. The last spring training game hasn't played since Friday, so missed the entire weekend. Are we surprised if Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton goes down too? Jay Bruce can play the outfield, right? And he can play first base. Yankee Stadium's like built for these lefties, aging lefties who can just put one in the porch. So last night I went out. I spent a little too much fab, but I went out and got Jay Bruce in like every single league I'm in. I mean, he's just an easy replacement.
I would imagine you could throw Rowdy Tellez out there, too, for people. Another guy probably might have gone undrafted or close in the shallower leagues. I'm just, trying to go through some of the names that might be able to help you. But that's a good one. Bruce, the nice thing about Bruce is, too, when Voit comes back, he's the easy automatic drop. And I know everybody likes to do that. It's not always the case where you could get that guy, right, Aaron? Where you find the guy on that same team, you're like, I really like the plug-in of this guy. That really works. But not always the case. Usually it's a huge downgrade. But Bruce is a legitimate MLB player for quite some time and still has some pop. And like you said, pretty good in that lineup as well in that ballpark. So also, the Eloy injury we talked about last week. I know it's a really big one. Is it just as easy as Aaron Vaughn is that guy, or do you think they're going to go and continue to bolster things up? There have been some rumblings about talking to Encarnacion and bringing him back too. How do you see that all shaking out with the White Sox? Well,
the White Sox, I know you had Eric Cross on the other day talking about his prospects, and the White Sox are one of these teams who, they don't care how old you are. They don't care, what your service time is, thankfully. One of these, hopefully the newer age teams. And so I think Andrew Vaughn is just going to slide right into the lineup, right into the mix. They'll stick him out in left field. I think I saw a quote. He said that anyone can play left field. I'm a Mets fan. You're a Mets fan. We watched Todd Hundley try to do it. It could be a disaster. God. It could be a disaster out there. But Vaughn's gonna hit. We don't care if he catches the ball in the outfield as long as he's in the lineup, right? Fantasy baseball. So I like Vaughn.
I remember Keith Miller trying to play center field too. There you go. There's a burn for you older Met fans if you got that road rash for you. The Todd Hundley left field was pretty ugly too. And in all fairness, it didn't look like Eloy Jimenez could play left field either. Just want to. So I don't know if anybody can play left field. That's going to be tricky too, because he's going to have to kind of move to DH for the rest of his career, right? So long-term dynasty aspect of Eloy, that's got to be the future, right? I mean, I think enough is enough there with the field. He was a liability there anyway. Now you get hurt out there. I think that's where everybody just kind of draws the line, because they've already made the investment, as you said before so astutely.
Yeah, they've already locked him up, so he's going to be there. He's not going anywhere. He's a DH, right? He's out there getting hurt in the outfield. He's not a particularly good fielder, not a good thrower of the baseball. He's there to hit the ball, and luckily the American League and hopefully the National League soon will have the DH.
Hopefully. From your mouth, my friend, to you-know-whose ears. All right, so let's do some positivity here. Let's do some spring ups. We've each got 3 up here and 3 down that we're going to give you. Some guys that we think that spring has had a positive effect on and maybe built some new life into some of these guys. So who's number 1 on your list here, Aaron, for your spring ups, guys who are trending in the right direction as spring training comes to a close?
Yeah, I'm going to stay completely on brand here. So I'm going to go with Anthony Bass in Miami. So far in the spring, 8 innings pitched with 8 Ks and a 1.08 whip. He was proclaimed the closer by like everyone in the world. He was signed to close. Mattingly's a traditional manager. Craig Mish, who of course does an awesome job covering the Marlins and fantasy baseball, he basically told you Bass is it. Go get Bass. Mm-hmm. He's been screaming this all winter, so you should have already gone and got Bass. Last year, or the last 2 seasons between Seattle and Toronto, Bass had 12 saves. He's not this big strikeout fantasy guy, but he does induce some serious weak contact. And over those last 2 seasons, 73 innings pitched with a sub-1 whip. So certainty, history, and a good spring. Super value late in drafts, or if you're in shallower leagues, that's definitely a guy in your waiver wire you can go get.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I listened to him because, I had to, because at Sports Grid I did a show with him 5 days a week for the last year, and I love Craig dearly, and he said to me, Anthony Bass is going to be that guy, that's who they signed to be the closer, and he said that way back when, and I listened like you did. And this is why you still should pay attention to those beat reporter guys, especially the ones like Craig who really do love fantasy baseball and, are playing it and respecting it, because they're few and far between of those guys out there. So they'll give you those little nuggets like that of the guys that are really kind of popping at camp and guys that can really contribute. So I have Bass everywhere, kind of like nice. You. He was my low-end pivot in so many drafts because I felt if I'm not going to spend on closer, I want to at least get the guy that I think is going to be the guy, as you said. And I want to get more into the whole traditional manager thing with you too, because I was told that, guys in baseball like their roles defined and everybody knows what they want to be. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I don't know. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to define anything. Do you have a problem with this? Because I do. I have a huge problem with it. I'm sure you could tell from my voice.
I can tell. I blame the Rays. I mean, everyone loves to laud the Rays for everything they've done. Now all of a sudden we've got an opener, a closer, maybe we've got a middler. Maybe there's a guy who comes in who can throw like right-handed and left-handed. That we tried that shtick before. The Rays are really messing it up for everybody.
Oh, God. The stupid Rays with their stupid bullpen use. I like roles. I like to define the roles. Terrible. All right, let's do number one for me. It's Taylor Trammell, who bounced around a little bit, but he finally looks like he might have landed in the right place in Seattle. He's had a really good spring training. There's a lot of buzz that he might even get every day at bats, possibly if he does break camp with the team. And look, we're recording this and things are going to be fluid, and these next 24, 48 hours, you're going to get the rest of the information of who's in and who's out. But regardless, I think he's done a good job for his stock. And I think Seattle, although they have Kelenic and Rodriguez, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody like Taylor Trammell just kind of came up and hit right away and was pretty good. And it's sometimes the guys that you're not expecting, like the Whit Merrifields of the world who come through, and nobody was expecting Whit Merrifield. There's been tons of these guys in the past. Even Dominic Smith, I think you could put out there a little bit. Nobody expected him to do what he's been able to do. And sometimes you get that with these guys. And I think Trammell is in the right place, and Seattle needs to kind of turn the page to this youth here and show the fan base something, because it's been, 20 years since they've been relevant, and it's unacceptable. I mean, it's really been terrible for Seattle, and it stinks because from 1995 all the way through the early 2000s, you had a really good baseball team there. You had the Griffeys and the A-Rods and the Ichiros and all these guys come through here. And now it's just been kind of a wasteland ever since, and it's just terrible. So Taylor Trammell is a guy in those deeper leagues I think he should glam onto. And I would also say in any of the dynasty formats, if he's still floating around there, which he might be, in the shallower ones, you might want to just add him to a roster and just to see what happens in the next few months. Number two for you. Who's number two? Spring up.
Number two, spring up. Nick Wittgren in Cleveland. Wittgren unscored upon up until his last outing this spring. The Indians had every chance in the offseason to name James Karinchak as the closer, but they didn't. And we already know that they trust Wittgren. We also know that the Indians or the Spiders or whatever their name is going to be, we know
the Cleveland baseball team.
The Cleveland
That's
baseball team. The Cleveland baseball team. They are cheap. The Lindor trade, of course, helped us, right? It helped us. We're Mets fans. We got him for nothing. And then, the other younger arbitration eligible guys, they'll cost more down the line. And this is a factor. This is sad, but this is a factor when it comes to finding bullpen arms. Is once they get the saves in arbitration, they use that against their teams. So far this spring, Wittgren 7 1/3 innings pitched, 1 run, 8 Ks, 1 walk. He's definitely earned it. He's inexpensive for the Indians, and he's inexpensive for you in fantasy. In 2020, he had a career-high 29% K rate, walked just 6% of the batters, which is the exact opposite of James Karinchak, who walks the world. We might be talking about him a little bit later, but he's the likely choice here. Yeah, he's the likely choice here in Cleveland to get the first nod for saves.
And this is what's so tough, especially with the early drafts, the early best balls and the things like that is, see a guy like Wittgren who kind of comes on strong here. And this is why you should wait to the last minute to draft if you can. Even if honestly, my home league just drafted this weekend and there were still a ton of things that are still in flux. And I just, it's unbelievable. I wish Major League Baseball would go back to the days where they would open on a Monday because you had that one extra weekend. And now that it opens on, now we have this situation where, they are opening on a Thursday or a Friday, depending on, how the games all hash out. And there's still time where rosters aren't set yet, and I miss that. I miss the whole rosters are set, let's draft. Okay, Monday starts the season. I like that. I miss it. Josh Bell is my second up. He is having a tremendous spring. And really, in recent memory, I'm trying to think of a guy who has gone from a worse situation to a better one. This is a real kind of culture shock here for him because you're going from playing with nobody in Pittsburgh. Let's be honest. Nobody was there. Marte was gone last year. Polanco's never amounted to what he was supposed to be. He had an incredible run a couple years ago. The season looked good number-wise, but really it was about an 8-week run or so that he had was really good. And there's some holes there still with Josh Bell, but I think the holes can be kind of patched when you put him into a lineup that has more protection. Now you're putting him in a lineup with Soto, with Turner, with we got Victor Robles possibly hitting leadoff. You've also got Kyle Schwarber you brought in. There's protection in this lineup now, and I think that's allowed him to relax. He's in phenomenal shape, which I know it's spring training. Everybody's in the best shape of their life. Yep. But really, you've seen him and Schwarber. Both of those guys look terrific. They've been hitting the total gym. Obviously the Chuck Norris infomercials made a big dent for Josh Bell, and he's been pulling the gym thing and doing the whole thing. But I'll tell you what, man, he looks great. He's hitting the ball everywhere. He is hitting doubles. He's hitting home runs. And I think Josh Bell is set up for a really good season where you're drafting him as a corner guy, but I think he's going to end up potentially, and I've said this here in the program before, maybe a top 12 first baseman. And I think that is a great return on your investment.
And first base, Joe, is sneaky, kind of shallow this year.
Sneaky bad.
It's sneaky bad.
It's a
lot of years, there's plenty of first basemen you could just say, hey, I'm going to plug this guy into my corner because he's going to hit 30 homers or hit 280 or drive in 90. It's not that easy to find those guys this year. Josh Bell's a good call. And
we just lost the first baseman in Luke Voigt. I mean, already to start the season, right? A guy who was probably in that 1A tier, maybe not the elite, but right after that for most people's minds. And he's already out for a couple weeks, so that is tough. All right, who is your third up? Let's keep the positivity rolling, my friend.
Yeah, positivity because of someone else's negativity. It's Jordan Romano in Toronto. You hate to say someone's up because another player gets injured, but Romano's taking advantage of the situation that's just placed before him. His velocity is his key to his pitching. He throws the ball 96 miles an hour, but he wasn't super special in 2019. And then in 2020, he switched up his pitch mix. So he began to kind of pitch backward, right? Not literally, like he didn't stand and face the center field wall and throw the ball, which would be really cool. I mean, I'm sure a Rays pitcher is going to do that one day, Joe, and then everyone's going to be throwing backward.
You didn't disappoint me. I was waiting for you to do it, and you did it. That's why I love you, baby.
Not literally, but instead of a 63% fastball usage, he went with the slider 60% of the time last year, and he threw it for a strike 2/3 of the time. So using the slider to get strikes, which is backwards. Then he used that electric fastball up and into righties, up and away to lefties. He had a 52% whiff rate on his fastball, which is incredible. I know you talked to Ariel Cohen on your FantasyPros extravaganza you had, which was awesome. And we always talk about what projections get right, but projections sometimes miss these things, especially in a short season where a pitcher changes his mix just a little bit. So those actual changes really led to Romano becoming a very good reliever last year. The Yates injury has opened the door for him. I think he's going to run away and be a very, very good reliever, maybe top 10.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because I had a lot of Yates too, because Yates was falling in that category of he wasn't being drafted with the top guys, but he gave me a little bit more, I would say, confidence than some of the bottom tier guys. So he was right in the middle for me. It was like, okay, well, if he slips a couple rounds past, I'll take him. I'll see what happens. Well, I've seen what happened. Now he's out for the year, but Romano has been lights out. You're absolutely right. The guy's been filthy, dominant, all of those fun things. And those are the adjectives you want when it comes to relief pitchers. I ask you this question. Do you feel confident that it's his gig? That's it. Lock the doors. He's the guy the rest of the season?
Yeah, lock the doors. He's the guy the rest of the season. Rafael Dolis is another guy that maybe you might want to sneak.
That was my question.
Sneak a dollar bid on. He's 33, pitched in Japan for 7 years. Mm-hmm. So, this isn't a guy with a major league track record. This is just a guy who's kind of been a reclamation project for the Blue Jays. Romano is like a real deal major leaguer. Came up in the Blue Jays system. They know all about him. They trust him. So I like Romano far better than I like Dolis.
All right, let's move on to the last one here. My third up is Jazz Chisholm getting the second base job for the Miami Marlins. This is smart for the Marlins. I think it's time to give this kid a crack. He's a really good kid. I've heard nothing but positive things about him. Look, this is the guy they got for Zach Gallen, which, I mean, could you imagine, just take a pause for a moment, how good this rotation would be if they had Gallen at the top of it, along with these other guys? Oh, my goodness. But they did bring in Chisholm, who's had a nice spring. He's hit about 270 this spring. The guy's got a little pop. He's got some athleticism. He's got some speed. Let's see how he develops. I think he's an upgrade over what they had, too. I don't think Isan Diaz was the answer there. I mean, these guys were just good gloves. That's great and all, but this is the NL East. You got to compete. You got to hit the ball. And you also have to show the fan base a little bit of, hey, we've made all these moves. We're rebuilding. We made the playoffs last year. We're trying to compete. And I think this is important. So I think from a fan base standpoint, it's important. From a fantasy standpoint, too, you're gaining another guy into that second base pool, which is also sneaky bad. let's talk about how sneaky bad second base can be. So I don't know what his Roto League upside is going to be, but just the fact that he's got everyday at-bats and that he's showing you that he's ready for the big leagues is a good thing. But what are your expectations for Chisolm this year?
I mean, when you're talking about a guy who's in the pool next to like Nico Goodrum and these types of second basemen who are like way, way down the rankings and have, 10 homer and 12 stolen base upside, Chisolm is all of that. Plus, he's going to get regular at bats for sure. Kim Ng, the general manager of the Marlins, came out and said, we want Chisolm in the lineup. He's going to be in the lineup. When you get an endorsement from your general manager that you're going to be in the lineup, you can be sure that he's going to be there every single day. So, regular at-bats, deeper leagues, nice little best ball filler if you're doing like last-second best balls, because he's going to get so many at-bats that he's just going to be able, you'll be able to plug him in, or the algorithm will be able to plug him into your second base spot.
Where do you see him hitting in the order?
Man, I think he's going to have to start down in the lineup. I don't think he's going to make it to the top quite right away. But prove yourself at the major league level. Show that you're not going to be chasing the breaking ball. You got to be able to hit. Again, we talk about real baseball when we talk about fantasy sometimes. When he's playing in the minors, first of all, we didn't even see him last year, right? We didn't see any of these guys last year, so we have no idea. You talked about Taylor Trammell earlier. He could have mashed last year in the alternate site. So I imagine that Chisolm probably did something like that, mashed in the alternate site, got himself a good, solid spring training invitation where he really had a chance to make the team. We were just overlooking that because we didn't get to see them last year. And now all of a sudden, the Marlins had faith in him last year, didn't call him up. Now he's on the team. If he shows that he can hit something other than the fastball, I mean, the Marlins lineup isn't that special. I don't see why he can't get up to the top of the lineup, one or two.
Yeah, I think there's the potential there too, and you mentioned about hitting good pitching. That's the same thing I put on Trammell too. Is look, we don't know if he can hit good pitching yet, and this is one of the things that spring doesn't always tell you. So yes, he looks good right now. Chisolm looks good right now. Let's see how he goes when they're facing the better pitchers in their respective divisions. Which as Chisolm is facing Max Scherzer or Jacob deGrom. Not that anybody hits off those guys, but even some of the better pitching, just generally speaking, that would be nice to see. So wherever there's ups, inevitably in baseball, there's the downs, right? We got the top of the inning and the bottom of the inning. And I know this is a spoiler because you already talked about Wittgren. So go ahead, take me through one of your spring downs, because I have a feeling one of them might be James Karinchak. Is that true?
It's James Karinchak for sure. Karinchak was going. I mean, I drafted early. I was one of these guys who wanted to just kind of get a feel for the player pool. I wasn't putting in my $1,700 main event team then, which I didn't get in this year. But Karinchak was going inside the top 5 relievers earlier this winter with good reason. He's got 100 strikeout potential, no doubt, from your relief pitching spot for sure. Cleveland let Brad Hand walk. Cheap, of course, and Special K is what they call James Karinchak. Special K. He was tabbed as like the next big thing in Cleveland, going to take over for Hand, no doubt. The only problem was he has no command, putrid command for sure, and that showed this spring. 9 2/3 of innings pitched, 10 hits allowed, 10 walks, 9 runs. Yes, 19 Ks, awesome, but a 6.52 ERA and a 2.07 WHIP. We talked about the arbitration thing before. He's arbitration eligible in 2023, so who knows if Cleveland's going to even allow him to get saves so he can use that against them in this case. But just been a bad spring. He hasn't shown that he has the command in spring, which I think is what the Indians were hoping that he would do. He hasn't done it, and so down. He's continued to fall down.
So is this a committee, in your opinion, or are they going to go into April saying, all right, let's just hope that spring is spring, and we get him back, and we go to Cleveland, and everything's fine, and he gets back to being the regular guy again? Because we've seen that. We've seen some guys that just have terrible springs, and it take a long time to kind of get up to speed. So has he done enough bad to completely be out of this conversation, or do you think this is going to be, well, we're going to see Karinchak one time, Wittgren another time, and just kind of see who kind of emerges as we go?
Yeah, he's not done enough bad to be totally off the grid, but Wittgren has done enough good to be the first shot. So if Wittgren can run away with it, I think the Indians would be just as fine as saying, okay, Karinchak and Clase and these live arms can just kind of sit behind Wittgren. If we win a few games, you try Karinchak out when Wittgren's pitched 2 nights in a row or something like that. But I don't think that it's going to be him on day, whenever the Indians win their first game in a 4-3 game in the 9th, early on in the season, you're going to see Nick Wittgren.
All right, my first down here for spring training is going to be David Price, who, I think in early drafts, people just kind of assumed, well, yeah, it's going to be David Price is going to be in the rotation. And then started hearing these rumblings of Price saying, well, I'll be wherever the team needs me kind of stuff. And you knew he didn't pitch last year. And now this past weekend, he was supposed to pitch and he didn't pitch because of an illness. And you see Tony Gonsolin getting the start. And you're starting to wonder, well, they got Gonsolin, they got May. Maybe it's not Price. We know Urias is already going to be that fourth guy. So this was not a good spring for David Price. Now, that being said, with the amount they're paying him, you never know how that all ends up shaking out. They might still go to him anyway, but it feels like David Price, this spring has not been kind to him in terms of kind of solidifying his role here. And for a 35-year-old pitcher, right, I think it's time that we all kind of look at this and go, okay, it's like we're getting towards the end here, no matter what the contract is and all of that says. So it just feels like the Dodgers are going to just do whatever the Dodgers do anyway. That's kind of, we talk about getting Dodgered on this show many times. And it feels like he might even get Dodgered possibly. So if you had to put your money on one of those three guys for the fifth starter, who makes the most starts between May, Gonsolin, and Price this year?
Well, I think you hit it on the head here that Dodgers are going to Dodger. David Price caught Dodgeritis early. He caught it in March, which is not something you want to catch. But May and Gonsolin are going to be fighting Dodgeritis all year too. So, you have to lower your expectations, I think, for all three guys, somewhere around like 105, 110 innings pitched, probably for all three. So that gets them to Dodgers, like about 330 innings out of the three of them. Maybe they'll piggyback off of each other. May will start, Gonsolin will follow, or Gonsolin will start and Price will come in. I can see them just kind of hacking up that fifth starter spot all season long and depleting the value of all three.
All right, your second down from spring training is who?
My second down from spring training is Archie Bradley. And Bradley hasn't done anything wrong this spring, honestly. Came over from Arizona in the offseason with 28 career saves, and a lot of people expected him to be that locked-in ninth-inning guy after the Phillies bullpen was just
and he was good with Cincinnati last year.
And he was good, yeah. But they were all-time bad in 2020, the Phillies bullpen. But awful. Joe Girardi already quoted as saying, and this is not something you want to hear when you're looking at potential save candidates, Bradley has the versatility to be used in many roles. That is like the kiss of death for relievers, especially if you're looking for saves. He's been stretched out in the past, of course, as a starting pitcher, kind of a failed starter turned reliever. His spring has been good. 10 innings pitched, 1 run, 9 Ks, but the incumbent closer, Hector Neris, has been the eye-opener in camp. Neris added a slider in the offseason. Results have been dope. Like 8 2/3 innings, 12 Ks. He has looked amazing, Neris.
And Alvarado's look good too.
And Alvarado's look good. They have more options now, right?
He's clicking up that triple digits on the fastball right now, which, I'm not, velocity isn't everything when it comes to pitching. Believe me. You throw it straight enough, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, Alvarado was that sneaky add to the bullpen that I had kind of just kept in my back pocket. It was like, okay, maybe in those deeper leagues, you start, those reserve rounds, you start throwing some flyers on guys like that too. But Neris with the extra pitch this spring has been eye-opening, and it does seem at least like he's going to be that guy going in the early going. But it's hard to have any faith in that bullpen because they were so bad last year, and we've seen Neris, blow up many times. I think we've all seen enough of that. Also, sticking with the Phillies, my number 2 is Scott Kingery, who, I cut Kingery a lot of slack in the recent years because I felt like the Phillies bounced him around everywhere. It's like, hey, go play third base, now go play shortstop, now go play second, now go play left field, and they kind of move him all over the diamond, and I felt like that's really tough for a young kid to know where he's playing, where he's hitting in the lineup, and to get right, just mentally from the preparedness standpoint, and then, it's hard to produce, and he's had a little bit of time here, and you know what? It looks like the time is done because he's getting sent down, which is probably the best thing for him in a way because you want him to get everyday at-bats. You don't want him to be super utility guy. But maybe Kingery was a little overrated to begin with, which I think might have been the case, and which is why I didn't think he was ever an elite, quote-unquote, prospect as some people might have thought he was. But it would be nice, I think, for Kingery to get a shot somewhere else. I think this is the piece if the Phillies, can move and make a package here, if they are competitive, to bring in somebody else. So keep an eye on him because it's a fascinating kind of like buy low in deep dynasty leagues. Like if you're in a 20-team league or something like that, Kingery might get dropped because people just get frustrated. Pick him up, see what happens, because he's still young enough that you never know. Michael Franco had a decent run eventually, too. But I think we're starting to see that, Franco is disappointing, Kingery's disappointing, Rhys Hoskins has been good but not great. I think from Alec Boehm's standpoint, we're hoping that this is the guy that bucks the trend. But the Phillies pipeline, just generally speaking, has been a little underwhelming, I would say, in the last few years. Nick Pivetta, we could throw into that mix. Velasquez. I mean, you could kind of go down a long line, and the longer I go, the more depressed I'm getting. So I'm going to stop here and cut this line right now. But yeah, it just seems like bad news for Kingery, and I don't know. I hope this isn't the end of his career. But I think a change of scenery would serve him well, don't you?
I do. When you lose out the job to Odubel Herrera in the spring, you definitely need to shake something up. And the Phillies did him right by setting him down to camp instead of placing him on the end of their bench where he's going to get just a pinch hitting appearance in the 6th inning of a blowout or something like that. He needs to go obviously work on what made him such a hyped prospect coming up. He needs to try to get back to the basics, maybe something like that. But you're right, a change of scenery, somewhere where he can just go and forget about the days when the Phillies had him tabbed as their top guy.
Yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate because he seems like a nice player and the versatility is great. But this is also what happens when you move guys around up and down. And it's kind of like, it reminds me all the time of what happened to Kevin Gausman with Baltimore, where it's just like, you're a starter, you're a reliever, you're in AAA, you're in the major leagues. Like, they just kind of bounce him around so much. I think he just loses confidence. And, they're people. That's just their stats to us. They're people. And I think when you shake a young player's confidence there, or you give them so much unknown about what their role is, it's tough for some of the younger kids. All right, who is your third down? Let's get to the bottom of the barrel here.
My third down in St. Louis, the Cardinals, Giovanny Gaellegos. The Cardinals have so many options to close, so their spring training stats actually matter a lot here. Last season was shortened, and they still had seven different relievers record a save in that shortened 60-game season. Alex Reyes, Andrew Miller, Jordan Hicks, Gallegos, all in consideration. March was very bad for Gallegos' chances, okay? Opposing batters hit like Ted Williams-esque against him in spring training. 393 average, Joe. In 6 2/3 innings, he gave up 6 runs, 11 hits, 4 walks. Meanwhile, the other competition for saves there, Alex Reyes and Jordan Hicks, they've allowed 6 hits in nearly twice as many innings pitched, 11. So both Reyes and Hicks obviously have some injury concerns, of course, we know that, but they might be able to play off each other a little bit, give each other some time to kind of, not bear the burden of the full closership. But I just think Gallegos blew his shot to be the guy starting off this 2021 campaign for the Cardinals closer job.
I'm always terrified to hear we have so many options for closer, because I feel like that really means we don't have a closer more often than not. And I think that's troubling. Yeah, it's great to have options, and I know they want Hicks to be the guy, but he's had a myriad of health issues too throughout his career. It's very frustrating when you hear these teams talk about, like, yes, well, we have all these different guys who we feel like could do the role. And I think all that really tells you is we don't have the guy that we wish we did. And that's code, and that's baseball speak. I think sometimes you got to cut through that a little bit. And, you could take a shot on Hicks, or, I mean, if you were going to take a shot on anybody there, I know we're going to talk about this a little later on the show. Would it be Hicks? Is that your guy that you think is the main dude?
Yeah, it's Hicks first in saves leagues, right? So if you're playing for saves, you're playing for Hicks. They've already talked about Alex Reyes pitching 100 innings in some various form, whatever that means. So he's not going to pitch 100 innings as the closer, because you're not going to get 100 save opportunities unless the Cardinals win 162 games. So Alex Reyes, I think, he might get a handful of saves, but I think the great majority of the save opportunities will go to Hicks.
All right, my last down from spring training, Ha-Seong Kim. A lot of publicity here. The Padres were out there spending like drunken sailors, and I love it. I love what the Padres did this offseason. But I thought this one kind of was odd to me because you got C.J. Abrams, who looks like he's going to be a star. You can't play him at shortstop because Tatis is there for the next 14 years. You're not going to play him at third because Machado's there for the next 8 years or however long he's there. So he's going to play second base, probably. Right? That's probably, maybe the outfield. I don't know what they long-term want to do with this kid, but usually you don't take a shortstop and move to the outfield. Usually he's a good enough athlete that you move to second base and you want to keep him in the infield. And then the Ha-Seong Kim was kind of strange because Cronenworth played well. I understand opportunity. You take a shot on a guy, but look, 35 at-bats this spring. His OPS is 374. Not his OBP. His OPS is 374. He's hitting 143. The guy just hasn't done it. Now, in all fairness, too, coming to a new country or coming to a new scenario, it's Major League Baseball. It's a different league. It's a different country. It's a different language. And maybe that's all just kind of heaping up on him at the same time. But still, this is, at the end of the day, you get in the box and you hit the ball or you don't. He's just not doing it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have drafted Ha-Seong Kim if you had gotten your copy of the Fantasy Black
That's
Book
right.
this year, because in my shortstop profiles, I did highlight Kim, and I quoted another one of your guests, Alex Fast, who just did the mock draft with you. Alex watched, he was involved in the KBO big time last year when, he was so into it, and he watched Kim, and the only quote he had on Kim out there was, when he gets to America, he's not going to be able to keep up with the fastballs, because the fastballs in the KBO are nothing like, they don't have the vertical movement and they don't have the velocity. And if you can't hit the fastball, you can't play at the big leagues. And so, I was a full avoid on Kim all draft season. And, you hate to see that the guy's not doing well. Of course, you root for everyone, but sometimes you like to be right too.
Yeah, but look, we keep it real here, and keeping it real, we know that it's not working. Like so look, send him down to the minors. Let's see what happens. I know you're paying a lot of money, but hey, look, sometimes you're going to fail with some of your investments, and this is the true in real life as it is in fantasy, right? You're going to take a shot sometimes, and this is where early drafting can hurt you, right? Because maybe you read that, but you didn't want to buy into that, or you heard someone say that, you didn't want to believe it. And then it turns out to be true, and you made a decent investment. Maybe he was a $10 player in an auction or something like that, or you took him with a decent pick in the later rounds, and it's not going to come to fruition. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the fact. All right, so now that we've kind of done our ups and downs for spring, just to recap with you too, the ups were Taylor Trammell, Josh Bell, and Jazz Chisholm for me, Anthony Bass, Nick Wittgren, Jordan Romano for Aaron. Aaron's downs were Karinchak, Archie Bradley, and Giovanny Gaellegos, and my downs were David Price, Scott Kingery, and Ha-Seong Kim. So I want to start with the bullpens now, because I feel like basically there's, 8, 9 closer spots where I feel like, yes, I feel good about this. Like, I feel like it's a third of the league. And before I even dip my toes in this water, do you get that same feeling? Like, a third of the league I get, yes, okay, this is kind of the picture of saves, and I feel pretty good about the bullpen. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I'm somewhere between 8 and 11 on any given
day.
Yeah, on any given day, somewhere between 8 and 11. You could probably twist my arm and get me to 12 if I'm really in a good mood.
No. I'd rather you be negative. I'd rather you under promise and over deliver. Right?
Okay, fair enough.
That's what I want you to do.
6, Joe.
So maybe there's one guy. There's one guy. We like him. Everybody else sucks. No, all right. So let's go through them. The Yankee situation, we feel pretty locked in, yes, right?
Locked in as you could be.
Okay, the Dodger situation. I think it was actually on your show where I learned this. That Kenley Jansen's gotten every save in the last, 4 years for the Dodgers or something crazy like that, right?
Yeah, it's 3 full seasons of every save. Yeah. So he's and 10 years the closer. He's the closer in the regular season.
And this is why you listen to Aaron's show, because I learned that myself on that show. So it doesn't matter how smart you think you are. You can always learn something from good people like Aaron who do great work, and that was tremendous knowledge there. So we feel good about that. I'm going to tread lightly with this one. I'm going to kind of say it and then duck. Edwin Diaz with the Mets. We feel good about him, yes?
Man, Nate on the Perfectly Framed podcast tries to get me to speak ill of Edwin Diaz. Man, yes, he's locked in as the closer. But again, he's only 25 innings removed from one pitch away from being booed off the mound as the closer in 2019. So, but yes, I'm very confident in Diaz. Mostly not just because of Diaz, but because of the Lugo injury too.
Right. Okay. That combination of things there.
Yep.
The Angels with Iglesias, right? All good. We don't have to spend too much time there, correct?
Locked in, my number 1 closer this year.
You know what? I love that you said that, because he's been, over the last few years, he's been so consistent and under the radar. And it's like nobody really cared about Iglesias. And I always had him in a lot of leagues because it was just he's going to have 30 saves and it's not going to be exciting, but it's just, he's there. It's his job. He's good enough. The White Sox, obviously with Hendricks, that's a lock too. Milwaukee's a lock or not.
Yes.
Is Hader the guy? Okay.
Yes.
Because I know there's been some rumblings about maybe we should make Williams the guy, and then Hader. It's still Hader, right? For people who are trying to figure that out. Okay.
It's Hader. Don't second guess that.
And then Brad Hand, because the Cleveland baseball team is cheap. Washington locked in, right? Those are my lock-ins. These are my locks.
Those are all locks.
Okay. Now let's go to. I think I know, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, I think it's Jordan Romano with Toronto, and we feel good about him. Correct? We're gonna kind of put him. I don't know. Let's say if there's 40 saves to be had for a team, we're gonna put him in the 30 range, the low 30s at least, right?
Yes, and he will get a long leash too, which is important when you're talking about these closers situations that aren't totally clear. You need a leash.
Are you concerned at all that Toronto being so aggressive this offseason maybe closer is another spot where they try to get more aggressive, even if Romano's good, just because maybe when you want to look into the playoffs with somebody with more, quote, experience. I don't know if that guy exists on the market this year, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there.
If you want a name for a guy who might get moved, it's like Trevor Rosenthal signed a 1-year deal with Oakland if Oakland's kind of out of it. But
when is Oakland ever out of it?
But Oakland's never out of it, right?
So forget that. All right, Boston. Are we confident in Boston's closer situation?
I am certainly not confident. Matt Barnes now has COVID, so
Right.
we've seen players come back and win the MVP, and Freddie Freeman, and we've seen players who've come back from COVID like Yohan Moncada and have just terrible years. So
or even worse, Eduardo Rodriguez,
who was didn't even pitch. Yeah,
that is a wide spectrum. Just to point that out for everybody, so you can't think that everybody's the same and it's just like 7 days for everybody and then they're okay, because it's not the case.
Right. So hopefully Matt Barnes does well with the COVID diagnosis and the symptoms, and he gets back and pitching well. They brought in Adam Ottavino, who is a clean inning guy. They've already said that in Boston he's going to be a clean inning guy. So that's actually good speak from a manager. So I think Ottavino has a chance to close. He hasn't done well in save situations in his history, and he does like to walk batter. So that's not a good combination.
Well, I was going to ask you, because it feels like Ottavino has been the default guy. And if you go back to that 1 year in Colorado where he was closing games, you went, okay, well, things were clicking there. And then he was very good for the Yankees for the most part.
He's got some command issues.
Right.
That's my only thing. And I think the Red Sox think they're really good, and so and Barnes has been okay. He hasn't been spectacular, so probably more of a committee here than any one of them running away with it.
All right, so Boston feels like a committee. Toronto, all right, so that looks like mostly Romano. Atlanta, is it just Will Smith? Or do you have any concerns?
Yeah, it's Will Smith. And Chris Martin's had a great spring, a really awesome spring, but the Braves paid Will Smith to be their closer, like $30 million deal heading into last season. But the Braves wanted to take their shot last year and not hand over the closer's reins right to him. So they brought back Melanson just as like kind of the stopgap for a 60-game season. Melanson's out now. He's in San Diego. So Will Smith is the guy. They have tons of lefties, so you don't be scared of that lefty closer kind of deal, because the Braves have tons of lefties in their bullpen, and Will Smith's the closer. That's a clear one.
That's good, because it's funny. I've noticed this trend in drafts where Will Smith is very cheap. I got him in Tout Wars very cheap. I think I got him for like $6-8 or something like that. Compared to most of the other like middling closers who go for 12 or 13, I got him for about half that. And I know it's kind of the moment in the draft too, but it just felt like is there something I don't know? But it just feels like you said, they're paying him. You want to get that premium role out of the premium investment. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I feel good about Will Smith too. Houston, you feel good about Presley there?
Yeah, interesting. Presley hasn't pitched in spring in a week. So I don't know what's up with that. That's not, and it's, no reports injury, no reports illness. If
just
Presley,
taking some me time, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, but if Presley isn't it, I couldn't tell you if Inaldi Paredes is the next guy. I have no idea. So, but let's just hope Presley comes back and pitches before the season starts, maybe today or something.
All right, so let's continue on here with these guys that we think these bullpens are going to shake out a certain way. Cincinnati, I've been drafting all the Amir Garrett. I can't believe that the manager hasn't just said, yes, it's the guy. It's still an open competition. He has literally struck out every batter he's faced this spring. What more do you need for these? He's got closer mentality. He is striking out everybody in creation. I mean, look, Lucas Sims is a nice pitcher. Doolittle has been absolutely dreadful this spring. Like, he has been a house on fire this spring. Like, complete dumpster, terrible, awful, no good. So why do they have this problem committing to Amir Garrett in this role? I don't understand.
Yeah, that goes to the manager. We talked about, you briefly touched on the traditional manager versus the new age guy. David Bell likes to think of himself as the smartest guy in the room. And so, Amir Garrett, Lucas Sims, even Sean Doolittle, gosh, when he makes the team, TJ Anthony, if he's not in the rotation, there's tons of guys who are going to be competing every single day. And I feel like worse than hot hand, just kind of like David Bell hand is going to happen here. So I'm avoiding Cincinnati.
You know what? I'm still going in for Amir Garrett. I'm hoping that, because I think he's such an animal, he's such a tough guy, that he is going to... There's very few guys that I think respond to competition well. I'll be honest with you.
He fought a whole team, Joe. He fought a whole baseball team.
That's what I love about this guy. He reminds me a lot of me. Like, he will take on an entire group of 20 other people. But I think that's what you want in a closer. You want that kind of guy that's going to be like, yeah, you know what? Okay, this didn't go well today. Well, tomorrow I'm going to come back and I'm going to stick it to you. And I think that's exactly the mentality. And some guys, you know, believe it or not, people think, oh, competition breeds good things. Not with a lot of these professional athletes. They are used to always being pampered and nurtured and told you are the best. So now all of a sudden you're not as good as everybody else, and it doesn't work. Go see Scott Kingery, right? We just talked about him earlier in the show. Like take a look at how competition doesn't always breed the best in people, but I think it's going to breed the best out of Amir Garrett. I really do. Like I just think that dude is a
I hope so.
Class.
He's fun to watch. I hope so.
He is fun to watch. God, could we have more fun guys? All right, Kansas City. Is it just Holland? Right? We feel pretty good there.
Greg Holland. Yes.
Okay, so the shaky, but we kind of have an idea. Toronto, Atlanta, Boston. Houston, we think. Cincinnati, you don't think as much as I do, and then Kansas City. So let's get to the ones that are in flux. Because, look, I'm going to start with the Cubs here, because they can tell me it's Craig Kimbrel all they want. Like, Kimbrel's done. I mean, I thought he was done last year. People wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I thought he's probably done 2 years ago. People still wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. There was a reason why nobody signed him. I think the book was out and people kind of realized that everything's trending in the wrong direction. So, Kimbrel with the Cubs, what's your confidence level there with saves in Chicago?
Well, not great. Not a good spring. I know he had like one outing where he touched like 96 once or something like that, which is hope just for Kimbrel, like Kimbrel guys who are marching with the pitchforks to keep Kimbrel on their team. Brandon Workman's there. He's had a good spring. I think he's like a good speculative ad.
I think Chicago. He's an excellent speculative ad. I love that. And you know what? Next year, I want to promise everybody, and as my grandmother used to say, God willing, we'll all be here next year at every single event we ever had at her house always. So God willing. But if so, we need to do this like maybe a week earlier this show, because this is so important, and Aaron's knowledge of the bullpens is so good. And please go follow him on the Twitter machine. I'll plug it again at the end of the show too, but go follow him at Fantasy Triage, again, Fantasy Triage, because he does such a great job with these bullpens. And this is so crucial, because in these drafts, it's like, how much of your draft capital do you want to spend or not spend on these closers and trying to figure this whole mess out? And it is a mess. And this is really helpful for those people who still have drafts remaining or still have fab pickups to go and run in certain leagues. St. Louis, we've kind of touched on this, but let's touch on it definitively. Hicks, yes, or committee cluster?
More Hicks than committee.
Okay, more Hicks than committee, which I think wasn't that a rap song for the 90s? I feel like, I don't know. Philadelphia Phillies, you feel really good about Neris, so we want to move them up a notch from the bullpens in flux?
Yeah, he's the Philly bullpen in Neris is closer to like Will Smith territory, where I think there are good options, but he's the best option.
And then you have the San Diego Padres, where you have Melancon now and Pagan. This one feels kind of awkward too. Like it's funny to me because of all the money they spent. You know, where is the money on the Brad Hand or the Trevor Rosenthal, which seemed like, well, Rosenthal was so good last year, just bring him back into that same role. That was the only thing the Padres didn't do this offseason that kind of irked me, because everything else I think they did, when you bring in the big pitchers, it looks so good. So what do you do with this? Do you run away from San Diego, or do you try to get both these guys and hope for the best?
I mean, typically I would tell you to run away from a situation like this, except the Padres are going to be so good. They're going to win so many games. There's going to be so many save opportunities. So if you could get the right guy, then you are gonna reap a reward unlike any other in the reliever pool. And so Emilio Pagan was basically undrafted most of the year, because Pomeranz was, you know, maybe the guy, or Melancon might have cut in a little bit. Pomeranz.
Do you think that's what it was? Did they think it was Pomeranz?
Yeah, I think the fantasy community thought it was Pomeranz. I don't think the Padres did. Pomeranz was a starter not that long ago. He doesn't have that many relief pitching innings or relief pitching appearances, to be truthful. And all these starters in the San Diego bullpen or San Diego rotation, you know, some of these guys have injury concerns. You know, Blake Snell doesn't throw in a lot of innings. We know Darvish in the past has had some issues. So, you know, Pomeranz, I think, to me, is more of that fireman type, that guy who's got more of a swing role. He's coming back now. He's throwing the ball, so he's going to be in the mix, maybe even for some saves too. But again, like I said, I would normally tell you stay away. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. You're not going to be able to find the right one. But I think if you get the right one, then you're going to get such a great reward. And so Pagan, cheap, go bid on him.
It
if
feels
he wasn't
like
drafted.
This is the one handcuff. Like that, so you're telling us that, like, if you're going to handcuff one situation, this would be the one to do it because of the multitude of saves that are potentially out there, right? Am I reading this correctly?
No, yeah, absolutely. So go invest in Melanson and Pagan, or Pomeranz and Pagan. Do that type of thing, because you don't have to pay for Pagan, and he's kind of like that cheap handcuff in fantasy football.
All right, how about San Francisco? What about the Giants?
Okay, everyone talks about Kapler as being the death of relievers, and Jake McGee has been a failed reliever for a long time, up until last year when he decided that he was only going to throw his fastball like 90-something% of the time. He literally threw a fastball like 97% of the time last year. And he's been doing that in spring training and been lights out still. So whatever he found in that fastball, I think he's going to get the first chance for Kapler. And I think maybe even Kapler's tired of Kaplering. And, he doesn't have, and he just doesn't have a lot of, who does he have outside of that? Reyes Maranta is too fat, Gott and Rogers, and these guys are not big time relievers. So, they went out and got McGee maybe to solve the problem of Gabe Kapler not having anyone.
Listen, man, I'll tell you, San Francisco, another team too, is like sometimes just like, what are they doing? What's the plan? What's the plan for Detroit? For the Tigers here, for their
well, I thought it was Joe Jimenez. I thought they had confidence in Jimenez as their guy.
That got shattered last year.
Yeah, it got shattered last year, and he just got sent down to the alternate site, so he is not in the mix. Gregory Soto is throwing the ball 101 miles an hour. I think they would like it to be him. He's got that lefty kind of thing going on too, so sometimes you have to be wary of the lefties. Brian Garcia pitched well. He's not a strikeout guy. This is a void for me. Yeah,
all right, so stay away from Detroit there. Handcuff San Diego, stay away from Detroit. McGee probably looks like San Fran. What about Minnesota? Because they brought in Colomé. Is it Colomé or not?
Yikes. Colomé is one of these guys who continues to smoke and mirror his way to saves every single year. And so I would like to doubt Colomé and tell you to, go get their Rogers or their Duffy or one of these guys who's going to be the closer. But I think this is just too much of a mess. I think they're going to give Colomé some chances and the other guys too.
This is so important, by the way, too, because, you want to be adding speculative names and some of these names that Aaron's talking and throwing out there. If you're in these deeper leagues, because you just don't know. One injury can happen, and boom, next thing you know, a guy is the default closer. Who is the closer in Pittsburgh, too? Because I think we all thought it was going to be Rodriguez. Is that the case? Or is it Crick? Or is it somebody else?
Well, I don't think it's going to be Rodriguez to start the season. Doesn't look like it. I think Crick is a guy in your deep leagues like we're talking about who you can go out and get for $1 or your first waiver round. Go out and get maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks of saves. I don't know if the Pirates might not win a game in 2 weeks. So that's quite a possibility. They lose their first 15 or 16 games of the season. This has been a total avoid for me anyway, even with Richard Rodriguez. They've already basically publicly said they're going to move him. So, yeah, I'm just avoiding. But it's Crick if you're really in a deep league.
There seems like there was going to be a false sense of security going into the year with Rafael Montero in Seattle. Is that the case, or should you be secure with him?
No, I think Seattle brought him in to be their closer. I think that we watched him pitch as the Mets. He's one of these guys who the Mets kind of jerked around, used some manipulation with, put him in the bullpen, put him in the starting rotation, back down to AAA, back up, kind of shattered his confidence. And he found himself to be one of these Raisel Iglesias types of like a 4-pitch reliever, which is very rare.
Right.
And he was able to harness that last season. And so, I do like me some Montero.
All right, let's talk about two situations that are now injury situations. Baltimore thought it was going to be Hunter Harvey to start the year. It's not. He's going to start the year on the IL. Leclerc is hurt for Texas. These two seem like complete clusters to me. But yet again, I mean, even though they're bad teams, they're still going to win 60 games. Probably not by blowing people out. There's going to be a lot of close games, you would imagine. So is there any name here early on, at least, that you feel like, is it Kennedy with Texas? Is it, just for the guy default of some kind of, experience in the role, even though it's short? Or do you think it's going to be somebody in Baltimore that really could emerge potentially?
Yeah, these are the guys who were being bid on in most of the expert leagues last night, and so it seemed like the experts across the industry were looking more for Tanner Scott than they were for Ian Kennedy. Tanner Scott was going in Baltimore, going for a little bit higher in the fab dollar range. For me personally, I'm going to go for the second guy behind both of them because I don't want to invest my early fab on a guy who. We have no idea what the situation is going to be. Two bad teams. Who the heck knows? So, I'm going to scale back a little bit. Again, I'm cheap. I'm the Indians. I'm going to scale back a little bit, and I'm going to go Matt Bush in Texas, and I'm going to go Cesar Valdez in Baltimore, and just kind of put those guys away for when Tanner Scott's command goes to crap, and Ian Kennedy remembers that he's not the 30 save guy he was in 2019.
All right, and Colorado and Arizona, we have three other teams after this I want to just touch on quickly, but Colorado, Arizona, I know they just said Arizona with, they did not want to come out this weekend and say that it's Soria, which is kind of odd because it seems like that was kind of the default, so should we buy into that, and should we buy into anybody closing games if it's Daniel Bard or somebody else in Colorado?
It's Soria in Arizona. Crichton's had a terrible spring, so right. Soria's going to get the run for sure in Arizona. Colorado is always a void for me. Daniel Bard's a great story. I'm rooting for him, but it's an avoid. You don't know when saves are going to be, so you can't just bench him in Colorado, right? So, and with hitters, right. You can play him on, or even starting pitching, you can play them on the road and sit them on the at home, but you can't do that with the relievers.
All right, so these last three in particular, Bass was on your list with Miami, so we just want to reiterate for everybody, you feel confident in Bass, I feel confident in Bass. That's a good scenario there. Then we have the Oakland A's, who were late to sign Rosenthal, but we feel like that is locked in as well, right? Do you buy into what you saw last year, or is that a little bit too much and you want to just kind of be cautious?
I'm cautious with Rosenthal, but I know that if the A's spend money, that they are going to get every dollar out of it. They're going to ring that dollar bill right. Nice and tight. So I don't think there's any competition. I love Jake Diekman as a pitcher, but he's not going to compete for save opportunities with Rosenthal.
And last but not least, I saved this for last because I know how much you're frustrated by the Rays screwing everybody's bullpen up. So Nick Anderson out for quite a while. So what's the deal here? Give me your take on this Rays bullpen the rest of the season.
You saved the best for last. Man, you just have to
Diego
not.
Castillo,
You just have to stay away. In most leagues, outside of the very deepest leagues where 10 or 12 saves are going to help you, that's about the max you can ask for from a Pete Fairbanks or Diego Castillo or whoever the next arm that they think.
Well, don't you think Castillo is the best profile guy for that role?
Yeah, but Tampa they don't care about the profile. I know, Joe. Like I do, and you do, and we all know that he's the perfect guy to do that. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to back down on the way that they use their bullpen. And Nick Anderson, injury or not, they're not going to give it just to one of these guys.
And this is why you listen to Aaron's podcast too, because all year they're going to be breaking this stuff down. So you should go and find him and subscribe to the pod, because Perfectly Framed get you all this information about these guys, because it's important. I mean, this is make or break in so many of these leagues too, winning the saves category and being able to find them, or even short, versions of this for a month, being able to have some of these names or have them so you're being proactive instead of reactive on the waiver wire. So let's have some fun to close things out here. Let's play a little Would You Rather. And I'm going to start here with a great closer question. So, would you rather, Aaron Pags, pay top dollar for an elite closer or spend fab chasing saves all year?
I have to choose one?
Yes, that's called Would You Rather.
Oh,
it's not,
man.
I like both of these. No, it's Would You Rather. I'm only giving you one opportunity.
I would rather spend most of my fab on someone than draft a closer early in most formats. Almost all formats.
I agree. And I was somebody that used to, I would say 6-7 years ago, I would be more the, let me grab at least one big time closer, because there were more guys that were solidified in the role. But now I feel like the roles are so wide open. It's such the Wild West in more than half of the league. Like, why not just, spin the wheel like everybody else and go chase it that way? Because why do I want to pass on a really good potential impact hitter or starting pitcher right? That's, to me, is the
and
problem.
That's the crux of the whole argument. If you're spending a 4th or 5th round pick on a guy who's only going to pitch 60 innings for you and get you, even if he does pay off and gives you 35 saves with a great whip, that is not even anywhere near worth what 180 good innings from a starting pitcher are, or a batter who can get you 5 different categories of production. So I would much rather spend my fab than draft early.
All right, here's another fun one for you. Again, would you rather? You can only pick one. Would you rather be a Major League Baseball manager or a Major League Baseball general manager?
Oh, that's easy. It's the general manager. The managers do nothing besides write down what the general manager texts them before the game now, right? Like the GMs have become, unless you're the Mets GM, then what's a whole other story.
Well, let's not get into
it's
that.
not into that, but because he shouldn't be texting anybody.
Mets HR has a lot of problems. That's all I can tell you.
But yeah, no, I mean, this has been the trend in baseball now. You put the the nerds from the Ivy League in charge of literally everything, and the manager just walks the box of bubble gum or whatever out to the dugout and says, "Go get him, guys." General manager for sure.
I don't know. That seems like a good gig. I'm going to take the manager gig.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to take the manager. I get to sit on my butt all day, and I still get to wear the uniform. But you get the blame
first. The manager always goes first, not the GM.
But I'm like one of those old school guys that I tell the guys, the nerds in the office, this is my team, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to Lou Brown in Major League. I'm going to run the team that way. It's going to be fun. We're all going to, smoke cigarettes in the dugout and drink beer in the clubhouse still, and we're old school and going to win some games. I'm the guy they bring in to fix everything. That's me. I'm that manager. All right, last but not least, would you rather your personal favorite team, which is the Mets, because you're a loser like me, win the World Series, or would you rather win an NFBC main event?
Oh man, that was about the only thing you could say.
I know
that was about the only thing you could say. I would rather the Mets win the World Series. My greatest moment as a baseball fan was watching the Yankees lose the World Series. Isn't that terrible? Like that's not a
sad.
good. Yeah, that's not a great moment. All my Mets moments, or maybe my second.
Hey, I
best
got the '86 right behind me here.
Right?
You can see it. There it is. Believe it. And it ruined me as a kid. I believed they were going to come back in Game 6. They did. And then they won Game 7, and the rest of my life, I said, look, if I just believe in things, it'll come true. And it ruined me for the rest of my life, Aaron. I became a terrible optimist forever. And but yeah, what you're saying is very sad. That is your high point. That's bad.
It's my high point. I mean, my high point was moments before my low point. My highlight was Andy Chavez reaching over the wall, bringing the home run back, and I'm sitting there next to a total stranger, and I'm like, we're going to the World Series, man. And then
Carlos Beltran, 3-2.
Yadi Molina off of Aaron Heilman. Like, what? No.
Well, Aaron Heilman, that's a whole other. Oh my God, that guy. That guy is like walking kerosene. I swear. You put him. You know what? If you have a barbecue, you just bring Aaron Heilman, and then you never have to worry about starting a grill. He's always just right there. He's the gas man. Oh God! But I'll never forget. 3-2, protect the plate, bases loaded. There's Carlos Beltran, and you know what? Credit to Adam Wainwright, who ended up becoming a pretty darn good pitcher for a long period of time. But yes, that it's sad. But I you know what? I think that says a lot about your character, that you still want that pure joy of seeing your team win.
I just want to feel it one time. I'm gonna, just give me one parade.
I got to tell you,
it's
since 1986 since I have felt it. I kind of agree with you. We're both just commiserating together. I think I would rather have that than the NFBC main event. Although that is a lot of money, so maybe I'll have to reevaluate that. But in the meantime, like I said, please go follow him on Twitter. He's Aaron Pags at Fantasy Triage. Aaron, tell everybody else what else you got going on this year.
Well, you can find my relief pitcher rankings updated every day at fantasyandframes.com.
Because they need to be every day.
Because they need to be, yep. And we'll be doing in-season rankings, too, because those will adjust every single day. You can listen to and subscribe to our podcast at Perfectly Framed with my co-host, Nate Markham. And then Nate and I are doing a Fab show every single Sunday, 5 minutes of Fab. So if you've got 300 seconds to listen to Nate and I ramble off some names that you need to bid on, we've got you covered. So every single Sunday, and we're doing that on our YouTube channel, Perfectly Framed YouTube channel.
I will be watching that because we should all be watching that, because I like when you get short form stuff like that that's very quick. It gives you things you need to know. Also, want to remind everybody, make sure you go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard. Get your MLB draft assistant with Sync and get ready. You only have a couple days left before the season starts for the rest of your drafts. Get your draft right, and Last chance, only hours left basically for the Juan Soto giveaway here at the end of March. Go to fantasypros.com/MLB contest. And thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction, you can enter a chance to win that free Juan Soto autographed jersey. It would look so good on my wall, but alas, I am not allowed, but you are, so go after it. All right, that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Aaron Pags, I'm Joe Pisapia. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.